Hi, here we are with another episode of Talking Tennis. It's a special episode today because I have a little bit of member of a special tennis royalty, dare I say, in Pam Shriver. I will give her an introduction. She doesn't really need it. If you're subscribing to this channel and you need to be introduced to her, then perhaps you should subscribe now. But I will say this. She is a former US Open finalist. She is an Olympic doubles gold medalist. And correct me on any of these stats, Pam, if I'm wrong. And she's also won all four majors as a doubles pairing with Martina Navratilova in 1984, was it?
Yeah, that's the year we won the calendar year Grand Slam. Yep.
Yeah, not bad, Pam. It's a pretty good CV. And of course, now turned broadcaster turned Twitter Spaces extraordinaire.
Yeah, that's been a really fun thing to get into. Courtney Wynn of the WTA Insider taught me how to use Twitter Space. I want to say like February. It may have even been the last weekend of the Australian Open. And it's really
Okay.
been fun, even during the Open. Like if I got off a little bit early and there was still an amazing match on, it was just sort of fun to share it with other tennis fans. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I dip in, you give people a little bit of a way in to have a chat. I think it's great. How do you find this new world that we're living in, Pam, with this kind of technology? Do you embrace it? Do you have a love-hate relationship with it? How do you feel?
I'm trying to embrace it. At my age, obviously, I didn't grow up with it. I have three teenagers. The twins turned 17 this month. I have an 18-year-old. This is all they know. So I have sort of tech support in the house, I guess. Maybe some of the challenges I find is just keeping all the different chargers straight, like not all the same. Even if you're an Apple family, not, there's so many different kind of chargers, even for a brand like Apple. So anyway, but I think as far as technology and data and how it's helping tennis, I think it's pretty significant.
Hmm. I mean, how does it compare to your day, therefore? I mean, also, what about the relationship with fans? Is it different in a big way today to your time, would you say?
Well, I think one of the positives of social media and Twitter Space is a great example is you have the ability to connect more easily with fans. I mean, what other type way? I mean, obviously, if you have a podcast or if you have a blog, it's kind of like one-way traffic, right? It's what I put out and it's what tennis fans or people who want to hear what I have to say, they listen, but there's no back and forth. Where with Twitter Space, it's actually like hosting your own mini talk radio show. And I also think it keeps up a skill set of how to communicate about tennis, how to ask questions, how to just, I think it's a good skill to keep. So if I go a couple, like now, I'm working for the Tennis Channel a couple of weeks in the fall. Next time I work for ESPN might not be till the Australian Open. So I kind of think it keeps you sharp too.
So obviously you're now a broadcaster. We're going to come to the recent, obviously US Open. That's what we're here mainly to discuss on the women's side, at least. How does it compare working in broadcasting, either for the Tennis Channel or ESPN, compared to how it felt to walk onto a tennis court?
Well, I find it to be a lot less pressure to talk about the sport than it was to try and play it. I mean, maybe early in my career, you mentioned US Open finalist. That was when I was 16. It turned out, who knew? Not many people have their best singles result at 16. I didn't play my best tennis in my career then, but I had the right draw and the right things fell into place. There were certain times in my playing career where things were clicking right on all cylinders, and I felt really confident. And walking out in front of a large crowd and performing in public was at times pretty easy and comfortable. But over the most part, I would say it's much easier describing it, talking about it, and seeing other people play. And the only thing you have to try and do if you have butterflies, because it's a big match and you're broadcasting it, is just kind of like the same thing you do as a player, is to remember to breathe and to not be nervous by talking too much. Don't talk over obviously over points. And also I'm trying to get really much better at when I hear the loud crowd reaction in the play-by-play position, which I'm grateful both networks let me work that play-by-play position. There aren't many women that do it. It's just to really be in charge of your team, being able to lay out. And obviously at this recent US Open, there were so many incredible points and moments that really required you to pull back and to not talk.
Mm. Um, Talking of which, we've had two finalists. I do want to focus more on the women's side today because I'll concentrate on the men's for another episode. But we've just had two finalists in Casper Ruud and Ons Jabeur, slightly different ages and obviously a very different stage of their career to where you were at when you made that US Open final. But is there a sense with both players that there's not going to be so many opportunities, and how did that come? Did you think when you were 16, oh, it's fine, I'll have
Oh,
half a dozen more
yeah.
opportunities, or did you realize that was a once in a lifetime?
No, I thought I'd have a lot more opportunities to play for major finals. It's what everybody was telling me as well. And I got to so many more semis. I got close, but obviously I played in a similar era as the men in the last, say, 15 years have run up against, which is, the wall of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic has been really tough, except for, three by Murray, three by Wawrinka, one each Del Potro team, and now with Alcaraz breaking through. But right now is a totally different time. I think it's starting to open up. Obviously, earlier this year, you still had, Nadal, Djokovic, the first three majors of the year. I thought Nadal's ability to win the first two was outrageously good given what he's been through physically. And I feel like he's kind of one significant injury away from saying, I got it, I'm exiting.
Hmm.
Federer, I'm not sure we'll ever see him back in the 3 out of 5 set stage. So I believe on the men's side, it's going to end up being more open and more, and unless Alcaraz and Djokovic, between the two of them, different generations, unless they kind of take the next 2 to 3 years and dominate the two of them.
Mm. And on the women's side, we had Ons Jabeur in the final. What would you say the chances are of her being in a final again soon, or do you see her being a major winner at some time in the near future?
Well, kind of going back to your sentence of obviously, if you get to two in a row, you would think that she'd have the opportunity, but there's no given. I mean, look at how well Pliskova's played over, say, the last 10 years, getting to two major
Hmm.
finals, losing both in tight three setters, getting to number one
Hmm.
in the world. She may never make it. It's not always easy. I mean, look how long it took Caroline Wozniacki. I think she won like 26, 27 events, got to number one, got to some finals, semifinals before finally that Australian Open fell into place for her. So it's easy to say, oh, sure, two straight major finals, but you never know. If Swiatek just ups her game and if other players come back to feeling comfortable, not necessarily. I hope so, because I think it would be a great historic moment for tennis, not just to have the first Arab woman through to a final and from Tunisia through to a final, but go one step further.
Okay, we're here to talk about the tournament as a whole. Let's wind back a couple of weeks if we can remember that far back. It does feel like a long way ago in some ways, but I think we have to begin with the Serena journey at this tournament. Were you courtside or in the arena for all three of her matches?
I was at Arthur Ashe Stadium for all of her matches. I was courtside with a closed mic for ESPN. I didn't. I did a quick interview after the second set, before the start of the third set, with Renee Stubbs. Just one question, but I was watching from our ESPN, the balcony that's right beside the booth. I would love to have gotten a call to be able to call at least one of her three matches, but it didn't play out the way, I would have loved to have been on one of them. But I watched them and I studied her whole, the lead up. I watched her play the doubles with Ons Jabeur and Eastbourne that led to a 3 hour and 11 minute loss to Harmony Tan. Saw her
Hmm.
play, win a match in Toronto, announced through Vogue, so I can almost go through her summer of retirement, her evolving summer, almost like I could my own career, because I followed it that closely. I thought the work she put in the 2 weeks prior to the Kovanic match was typical Serena. Like, she just rolled up her sleeves, worked hard. You could see her footwork and her ability to play some defense while it was never going to turn back the clock, right? 15 years or 20 years. She was able to pick up a step or two just by training hard and playing sets. So it made for a great first week. And those three matches I'll remember forever.
Did you get a feeling as though this might end up having a pretty romantic ending in terms of maybe going all the way, or did you ever? Because there were some people in the tennis sphere that were starting to think, "Oh, this may end up being an incredible run."
Well, I went through a couple of different uh, thoughts on this prior to the tournament. When I saw her play between Wimbledon and the two lead up hard court tournaments, I was like, not a chance in the world. I was just hoping she'd get a good draw, be able to win a match, maybe go out. I don't know, like Contavate ended up being a perfect number 2 seed to play against because really her last 6 months or even 4 months, especially since she got COVID, I think in April, she hasn't made a full recovery. So it was a really good match for Serena to play in the second round. But you could see the improvement, even first set Kovanic to second set Kovanic, and then the way Serena played, say, in the final set against Kontaveit. So then I think all of us started to think, okay, she's now got a day to recover from the singles match, although the doubles match was played Thursday night. And I thought that was maybe a setback for her singles the next day. But anyway, the point is, I did start to think going into the Tomljanovic match, which was a decent draw, even though Isla's won a lot of matches in the last few years, been back-to-back quarterfinals of Wimbledon. I thought that was a really good third round. And I think when we saw her play, she should have wrapped up the first set, served for it, was up 4-love, should have won that second set more easily. And then as it turns out, it was my suspicion that she may run out of a little bit of gas she didn't really have in the tank for that final set. But yes, in between Kontaveit and playing Tomljanovic, I dreamed a little bit. I thought, wow, this could, in this era of women's tennis, this could run for a few more matches.
That final match, perhaps it may well turn out to be the final match of her major career, at least, or her competitive career. If it does turn out that way, what a match. I mean, even that final game, I agree with you that she did seem at times to start to feel like a running out of steam, but she was just going for it. She was facing, match point after match point after match point, and she was returning it with all the venom that she had when she was 19.
So that's when I was sitting courtside and I wasn't really, I wasn't working. I had the mic in case there was breaking news or something happened. But to be that close to the players, to feel the energy of the stadium, even though the set, I think it was 5-1 when Serena fought off all those match points.
Mm-hmm.
But the way she did it with some of those return winners and then the roar of the crowd, she just didn't want to let it go. And fighting off those handful of break points, having that last game take so long, it was really a good ending. Because, I mean, Sampras obviously was able to win his last tournament, win a US Open. We didn't know it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But 99.99% of us, we lose the last point of our career.
Yeah,
so but I thought the way that game played out was pretty memorable.
She's been on TV in the US on a couple of stations in the last 24 hours, giving some nice, candid interviews. Do you get the sense that this is definitely it for Serena, or is there still a chance that we may see her pop up in Melbourne?
Well, for a long time, I've always said I never trust a tennis retirement. I've seen too many players announce their retirement and come back. But in this case, given the fact later this month she turns 41, given everything she's trying to accomplish in her life, both personally and professionally, I do think it's the last we've seen of Serena on the singles court. Could she decide with a month to go to play with Venus in another doubles? Maybe they're not happy with that last match, first round loss at the Open. I don't know. Here's the good thing about tennis. I mean, I have a court in my backyard. I've been retired since '97 from playing the tour. I don't have to ever give up playing tennis. So you do eventually have to give up playing professional tennis, but Serena can have a playing relationship with the sport as long as she wants.
Pam, how does it compare to, say, I mean, obviously very different players and very different years and stuff, but, what was it like for you when you were thinking in sort of mid-90s about the retirement situation? Did you have an ideal plan of how it would pan out, or what was your thought process?
Yeah, it was interesting how it ended up panning out because I ended up going full circle. From the first tournament I ever played in was run by a woman, kind of a pioneer in sports marketing. Her name was Sarah Fornashari. She worked for Donald Dell in the 70s, and she was the tournament director of this pretty good sized tournament in Washington, D.C., near my house and near where I live in Baltimore, Maryland. So I was like, I qualified through a local, like anyone who lived within 50-mile radius of Washington, D.C. could play in this local qualifying event that would get you into the main draw. So I did that in January of 78, 9 months before I got the finals US Open. Okay, then go forward to 1997. Sarah is no longer promoting or owning a tournament in Washington, D.C. or a tournament director, but it was in Oklahoma City and it was like the size of a 250 event. And I just thought and she'd become one of my best friends by then as well. So I was like, that's where I'm going to finish. I'm not going to finish at the US Open or Wimbledon. I'm going to finish at Oklahoma City with my dear friend, tournament director. And it was really, for me, given my career, it was really good. It was symbolic. I actually won a couple of matches, got to the quarters. My late husband was there with me, and I had a really great last tournament because I didn't win back-to-back matches very much in the last 3-4 years of my career. So it was time to go.
I mean, we've got a similar situation with Petkovic as well, who sort of said goodbye to tennis during this US Open. I think she's also said that she wouldn't mind saying goodbye officially, at least, to somewhere a bit closer to home. Does that kind of make sense as well, bearing in mind what you just said?
Yeah, I think Federer's thinking the same thing. Is if he can't play 3 out of 5 and the knee keeps having setbacks, maybe Basel is going to be, a good farewell to do it in your home country. So yeah, it depends. I mean, if Petkovic is really comfortable and just kind of feels, yeah, actually ending at the US Open where she'd had so many great moments. The Petco dance, I think, was debuted at the US Open, 10, 15 years ago. It all depends. But as I said, Petkovic could get a wild card in a tournament in Germany to have her send off be at home. So it's up to her and she'll figure it out. I loved her tweet right within a couple of days of she was at a beach somewhere with a drink in hand
Mm-hmm.
saying, about to say goodbye to my 6-pack. It was great. It was great.
She's a real personality. I enjoyed her press conference as well, and I've enjoyed her both on and off the court over the last decade or so. Listen, back to the US Open. There were so many other narratives. I mean, Serena obviously dominated that first week, and then once she went out, it was probably time for certain other players to spread their wings. Let's talk about Coco Gauff. I thought she looked really good. And then she ran into Caroline Garcia. Swiatek aside, the form player of the last few months, in fact, possibly even more so than Iga. What did you make of Coco's tournament, and how do you see her immediate future?
Well, I feel like she's been making steady progress. I mean, I know she's not number one in the world after US Open points from last year fell off in doubles. But, she's
Hmm.
proven to be one of the best doubles players in the world. She's now in the top 10 in singles. It's kind of been this progressive, not like Emma Raducanu who had that, rocket launch by going through qualifying and winning last year's US Open. It's been a much more steady, step-by-step improvement. And I don't see any reason why that's not going to continue. I'm sure she's impatient and all, but she just has to keep saying, okay, I'm 18 and a half, I'm 18. If I love this sport, I could conceivably play 20 more years. So that's 20 times 4 majors. That's 80 more majors. So it's kind of like you can feel the pressure when you approach one of the 4 big tournaments. Like, I want to win this one. I want to win this one. But you really have to step back and keep the bigger picture and how many opportunities you will have and
Hmm.
realize that it's not a sprint. It is more of a marathon. So I think it's all green light and great things ahead for her, but she's going to have patience.
What did you think about the match against Garcia? Did you think, was it the occasion? Was it being in front of the New York crowd? Or was it just simply that Garcia was better on the day? I mean, it was straight sets, I believe, in the end for Garcia.
Yeah. Oh, I was courtside for that one, working the match. Garcia was relentless with taking
Hmm.
time away from golf.
Yeah.
And even though they had played a few other times before, playing Caroline Garcia this summer was a really different experience than playing her in any other time. Maybe the run back a few years ago when she got inside and she got to like 4 in the world. I think she can have these highs that are incredible. So I think Coco was a bit, oh my goodness, all the time's taken away. Obviously, the Arthur Ashe Stadium was filled and it was loud. And I thought Garcia did a great job sort of keeping the blinders on and not letting the crowd kind of derail. I thought Coco played okay given the circumstance. I just think Garcia brings, when she's on, she takes your rhythm, she takes your time away, and attacks second serve. So she puts pressure on you like very few others do. And then of
Uh,
course, by the time Garcia played Swiatek, it was like a different player. She was not very good.
yeah, I agree. Garcia obviously then progresses to the semi-final. I think it was Ons Jabeur, of course, that she lost to in that
Oh,
semi-final.
that's right. That's
But
right.
yeah, but I
Sorry.
get you. But
Got
I
it.
know exactly what you mean.
Woo, got
What
it
did you?
twisted.
Yeah, what did you think about that? Because I was actually in the stadium for that, and one thing I thought was actually that Garcia didn't mix up her tactics at all regarding the serve return of serve position. I remember one second serve towards the end of the match that she barely got a racket on. This is Garcia, and I'm thinking maybe it's time to stand a bit further back, or am I being a bit harsh?
Wait a second. Let me just think about this. I'm not looking at the draws, but Sabalenka was up 4-2 in the third on Swiatek in
That's right.
that semi.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I think Garcia. Oh, that's right. So Garcia did lose to Ons. Well, so if I can just go back to that
Yeah, sure.
Ons Garcia match. So Jabeur has the perfect variety to probably be a foil on the Garcia pressure offense, right? And I feel like Ons Jabeur's team had a great game plan going in. I do
Agreed.
think Garcia's level dropped under the occasion of a semifinal. It was her first one in singles.
Hmm.
Um,
By the way,
and maybe
just a
she,
quick point on
yeah,
this as well. Ons has a 7-0 record against
I
Garcia,
know.
going back to juniors. That's including four in juniors, but that maybe tells
Yeah,
us
so
something.
definitely. So there's obviously a bit of a matchup problem. And when you saw that they lost, that Garcia lost four times in their last year in the juniors,
Hmm.
and they only played twice, right? That's not only playing
Hmm.
twice at the WTA tour level is not a lot, but there must be some scar tissue there because otherwise, I feel like Garcia was all set to play a better match.
I'm glad you mentioned the other semi-final though, because I do want to talk a little bit about Sabalenka before we finally come to Iga. Um, Sabalenka is another one of these players, perhaps Maria Sakkari, maybe even Ons Jabeur, albeit that Jabeur has at least overcome this semi-final hurdle. With Sabalenka and scar tissue as well, and semi-finals and coming close. I think it was a tight three-setter last year in the semi-final. I think she played Leylah Fernandez, I believe, in the semi-final a year ago. Do you think with Sabalenka, there's maybe even more scar tissue than there is with Ons Jabeur that she can't quite? I mean, she was 4-2 up in that third set. And I don't know, I felt really sorry for her, especially when she comes into the press conference. She's obviously really down. She probably last thing she wants to do is face the press. What do you think about
Yeah.
Sabalenka's tournament? Of course, she nearly went out to Canepi, and also, about her career as a whole.
Well, listen, I every time I think of Sabalenka this year, I flash back to one of the lead-up tournaments before the Australian Open, where I was working for the Tennis Channel, and I literally saw, and I've seen a lot of terrible serving yips, whether it was Kornikova, Dementieva, Guillermo Coria, Miroslav Mechir, on and on and on. I've seen a ton of them. I'd never seen anything like this. It was like, she was missing serves by 20, 25 feet, both long and like she was serving and couldn't even reach the net. Then she went underarm. I'm like, oh my gosh, how's she going to recover from this? Well, she actually did a great job during the year. She brought in a biomechanics specialist
Hmm.
and she put herself back in the conversation. Obviously, Kanepi should have beaten her, but then she had a sort of like a lease on life. Sure, I'm sure at 4-2 in that final set, the demons come back, right? Because she should have beaten Leylah Fernandez last year. She was favorite, and that should have ended Leylah's run. So there's a lot going on, but I think if Sabalenka can be resilient enough to deal with all those service yips and perform as well as she did at the last major of the year, then I think she can win one of these. It's just she's going to have to keep that biomechanics person close by.
Pam, did you ever have any kind of yips moment, whether it be on the
Yes,
serve or forehand or whatever?
both. And it happened later in my career. And it's funny, for me, they were very much connected, the forehand and the serve yips. And it was both left hand on the serve, it was both left hand and right arm. So, in other words, my toss would go off and then my right arm would get all uneasy. I mean, there was just anxiety everywhere. And then that would also translate to the forehand side. So, I can definitely relate. I had my last serve at Wimbledon on center court. I lost to Anko Huber. This is in '96. I framed the serve, the top of my frame. It landed in my service box. So that was, talk about an embarrassing ending of a Wimbledon career. But
So that was a double fault, was it, Pam?
it was worse than a double fault. If you could do like a triple, quadruple fault, that's what that was. Yeah, it was game, set, match of a career in singles at Wimbledon.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I guess we have to get to it now. Let's get to the final itself, and then obviously Iga's win, and obviously sadly for Ons her loss. What did you make of the final? Did you see it as being a one-sided affair for at least a set and a half, and then
Oh, it
Ons,
was. Yeah.
Ons obviously getting back into it somehow?
Yeah, it definitely had two parts to it, right? I think all of us were just, no matter if you have a rooting interest or if you're a fan of one over the other, in major finals, you want to have a memorable match. You want to have a good competitive match. And through the first, it was 6-2, 3-love, I think. And I
Yeah.
was just, oh my goodness, is this match just going to be one of these Iga Swiatek steamrolling over the opponent in the finals, which when you look at her last 8 finals, she hasn't lost a set. It's one of the more incredible streaks, really.
Mm-hmm.
But give Ons Jabeur credit, and I think she got some probably help from the crowd. It was a day I was traveling back to my kids. I didn't work on the weekend, so I
Mm-hmm.
watched some of it from the airport, some of it from the airplane. But I thought Ons's comeback and not just going down meekly was terrific on many levels. It was a very memorable last set of tennis, and did kind of make me think, like, should the semis and the finals be 3 out of 5 set for the women? Because I felt like Ons was settling in so much better, and people wanted more, and it was over a little too quickly.
I would love that match to have gone 5 sets, and if it ends up being a straight sets victory for Iga, still so be it. But I think it may have made it a bit different mentally for Ons as well, either going into the match or even going into that tiebreak, which of course she ended up losing. I think she made 6 out of 7 unforced errors in that tiebreak, which ended up meaning that Iga took it. Okay, Iga, what's her secret, especially in terms of finals?
Well, obviously, by the time you get to a final, you've had, in the case of a major, you've had 6 matches. So you're match tough, you're ready to go. Obviously, she has a really good mental mindset for a final. And I'm sure her mental health, I'll call her mental health coach, Daria, has something
Mm-hmm.
to do with that. I think the fact that by then she can really have confidence in the forehand side, that's one of the best shots in women's tennis.
Yeah.
And now she's just stood this test since 2 years ago when she won her first Roland Garros. She stood this test of time in finals. So I think she goes in now where the opponent is like, uh-oh, I'm playing Iga in a final. So I think it's affecting the opponent on the other side of the net, knowing her record. But I'll just say, I saw quite a few of her sets and matches leading in to the finals, and Iga was able to win that U.S. Open. Besides the first set and half of the finals, she won it without her A game. And that's one of the signs of a real champion, is to win, some of your majors. And Serena did it time and time again through the years, is she would win, like she won her last Roland Garros, and I think it was 2015, where 5 of the matches were 3-setters. She was sick during the tournament. She never hit full stride, but she went away with the trophy. So, I think that's a great sign of what kind of champion that Swiatek has become.
Is she going to win many of these things?
Oh, it looks like it. It looks like at Roland Garros, where she's already won 2 in the last 3 years, and she's just 21. I don't think anyone will ever catch up with Rafa, but I can see her matching Chrissy. Chrissy's
Mm-hmm.
total of, she can get up there 6, 7, 8.
Mm-hmm.
Now that she's won, this is a big deal for her to have won her first hard court major, and to win the first one away from Roland Garros. That's a big deal. That means she'll go in with a whole new level of confidence at the Australian Open. I still want to just sort of lament the fact that we don't have Ash Barty still up at the top, because the two of them, I think, could have had a couple of years of a great rivalry. Kudos to Barty to figure out that 3 majors was enough. She had enough money and she was ready to walk away. That's another retirement, though, that I'll keep an eye on.
Yeah.
But Iga's right now, she's by winning that U.S. Open and sort of erasing the 4-for-4 record after losing to Cornet and losing this 37-match win streak. She kind of had a mediocre summer going into the U.S. Open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she did. Listen, Pam, wonderful for having you on board for this last half an hour. I really appreciate your time. I'm sure the viewers of Talking Tennis really appreciate your thoughts on the tournament and some of the thoughts from yesteryear, as well as sort of Serena and everything else. So it's been a great half an hour to have you here. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon. And if not even on here, we'll certainly be checking out your Twitter spaces for watch-alongs and general chats.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Pam. Take care.